Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome. 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 Salams, where you're from. And we'll begin in 4 minutes. We'll get started in 4 minutes. Nimra wa alaikum assalam. Nimra's in Pakistan, wa alaikum assalam. Finally here on time. Yes, finally. Wasifa, wa alaikum assalam. Patricia in Philly, wa alaikum assalam. Hamna, wa alaikum assalam. Nurin in Bangladesh, wa alaikum assalam. Zahra, wa alaikum assalam. Shumayla in Dallas, wa alaikum assalam. Hina, wa alaikum assalam. Aisha Jallo in UK. Zahra in Pakistan. Humayun, I'm doing good, thank you. Alaikum assalam. Lulu, Perth, and Lena, how are you, sir? I am good. Thank you, Nimra. Waiting for today's live. Hasina in Queens, New York. Wa alaikum assalam. Samia, wa alaikum assalam. Malika, wa alaikum assalam. And Faratun says, my daughter Hayat is saying salams. Wa alaikum assalam. Hayat, how are you? Saima Manshi in Michigan. Wa alaikum assalam. Tamkanat in Pakistan. Wa alaikum assalam. We'll get started in 3 minutes. Asma says, couldn't join. I was at work. Well, alhamdulillah, that's good news. You're feeling better, so you're back to work. Nadia in Katy, Texas. Wa alaikum assalam. Ahmed Al-Wali, wa alaikum assalam. I'm good, thank you. We'll get started in 2 minutes. Hamna says, finally joined one on time, alhamdulillah. Tam Kanat says, how is your Ramzan going? Alhamdulillah, it's doing good. Zahra says, I love your way of talk. Thank you, Zahra. Thanks for tuning in. Selma in Kuwait, wa alaikum assalam. Hamza in Singapore. For those who are tuning in, we will get started at the top of the hour. So there is 1.5 minutes left. Lubna, wa alaikum assalam. Hamna says, I have a question. Inshallah ta'ala, I'll take questions at the end. Al-Kabir from Nigeria, alaikum assalam. Lubna in Toronto. Again, you're in Toronto. Nusrat, Nasi, and Nabiha from North Carolina, alaikum assalam. Amina Wilson, alaikum assalam. Hamna says, before you start, I have a request. Milgo in ASC, Toronto. Salima in Botswana, welcome. Inshallah, one day I'd like to visit Botswana. One more minute, we'll get started. Shamanaz, wa alaikum assalam, Montreal. Layla K in Chicago, wa alaikum assalam. Hamida in London, wa alaikum assalam. Altaf, good morning, Ramadan, from Northern Virginia, wa alaikum assalam. We'll get started in 30 seconds. In 30 seconds, we will begin. Fadi, ahlan wa sahlan. Sundus, alaikum assalam. Anam in Connecticut, wa alaikum assalam. And the time has begun. Take one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala, amma ba'd. So today we are reciting the verse. This is Surah Al-Imran, which is in the 4th juz, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, وَسَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَّبِّكُمْ وجنة عرضها السماوات والأرض أعدت للمتقين الذين ينفقون في السراء والضراء وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. So this is ayah 133 and 134 from Surah Al Imran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَسَارِعُوا, and race to, وَسَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ, and race to forgiveness from your Lord, وَجَنَّةٍ, and a paradise whose expanse is the heavens and the earth, أُعِدَّتْ, it is prepared, it is already prepared, لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, for the muttaqeen, those who are conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who make it their characteristics to be conscious of Allah. And then Allah describes who these muttaqeen are, because we want this Jannah and it's prepared for the muttaqeen. So who are the muttaqeen? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains, الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي السَّرَّاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ, those who give in the good times and the hard times. Those who give in the good times and the hard times. And I actually wanted to make the topic today called debt relief. I wanted to call this Tarawih Truffle debt relief, but we'll get to that in a second. Those who give in the good times and the hard times. These are the muttaqeen whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has paradise prepared for. وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ, and those who hold back their anger, refrain from getting angry. وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ, and those who forgive people. Wallahu yuhibbul muhsinin, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves those who do good. So first off, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in this verse about racing, the concept of challenges and racing. When I was teaching the history of the Khulafa class in Al-Maghrib Institute, I came across this theme. I kept finding myself saying again and again, well, here's another example of competition. Here's another example of competition. Here's another example of competition. I'll just give you some quick ones, like Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhu competing that who would give the most in charity. You have examples of competition like the Battle of Uhud, when the Prophet ﷺ said, who will take my sword with it and fulfill its right? And everybody wanted the sword, and the Prophet ﷺ was only going to give it to one person. You see in other battles that, people would team up with their own brothers and cousins and nephews in tribes, and they would compete against each other. SubhanAllah. And I just got some more memories of those kind of. So I found this recurring theme of competition and racing. And if you look at, just reflect on your own community right now, your own masjid, your own, may Allah open it, inshallah ta'ala, and everything be good. But if you look at your community, what aspects of competition are there? And my guess is there is very little competition in your life, in your community. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَسَارِعُوا, and race to, وَسَارِعُوا, race to what? This is interesting because you would assume that the race is to paradise. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't say that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and race to forgiveness. Race to forgiveness. وَسَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَجَنَّةٍ, and paradise. So it's interesting. Paradise is the destination. And this is something actually I teach in the visionary class. Sometimes people make dua for a destination. And I might tell them, what's the vehicle that leads to that destination? What's the vehicle that leads to that destination? Make dua for the vehicle. So I'll tell people, yes, you combine dunya and akhirah type of duas, and you want to make dua for the akhirah and the hereafter, but what action and what result happens on this earth while you're alive now that will lead to forgiveness, that will lead to that place in the hereafter? So the journey and the race, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the competition, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَسَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ, which is really interesting. So you're supposed to compete with others for Allah's forgiveness. So this is something that comes to mind. Have you ever seen how, let's say there's children in a school, and there's some litter on the floor, some trash, and then some rubbish. And then the teacher says to one of the students, pick up that rubbish, and the child says, I'm not the one who dropped it. And so you can imagine that maybe 2-3 other children say, I will pick it up. I will pick it up. This is what racing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness is about. It's like racing to good deeds so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us, and racing to paradise. When we look at things that people already compete on, what do people compete about or race towards? And I thought about this. I would say one of those things that people currently compete with, which doesn't matter in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, toys. So toys, things like a house. So my house, I need it to be bigger than my neighbor's house. I need it to be, I have to have a nicer this, a nicer that. If you have those things, great, no problem. But if you're doing it to compete with somebody else, it's like, oh, you know what? I need to get a bigger house because so-and-so has a big house and ours needs to be bigger than that. So competition, that's an example of competition, not necessarily haram, but it's not what needs your attention. Toys like cars, toys like, other things that people have toys of. Another thing that people compete over in this digital age is something like how many YouTube followers you are or how popular you are online. That's another thing in this digital type of thing. People are racing towards that. You also find that people compete with bank account size. So somebody says, oh, I have 10 million. And someone says, oh, I have 15 million. One person, I have $1 billion. I have $2 billion. Yes, these are things that people compete with. And yet the focus has to be on competition for racing towards maghfiratan min rabbikum, racing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness. One of our other daily huddles was about maghfirah, which was about forgiveness. And forgiveness, that maghfirah, is in Arabic, it literally means helmet. And it's worn by a soldier in battle because it protects the soldier. So if that's the case, when you look at maghfirah, it's not just forgiveness, but it is protection. It's protection from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so if you want good in this life and you want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's protection, we seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness and we race towards that. We race towards it to win that characteristic from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to win that maghfirah, the forgiveness and paradise whose expanse is the heavens and the earth. So now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us as we continue in these verses that it's prepared for the muttaqeen. It's prepared for those who characterize themselves as being muttaqeen. And so you want to ask, well, who are the muttaqeen? What do I need to do? Somebody was asking in the questions, I saw it here for a second. What do I need to do to be amongst the muttaqeen, those who get these things, who get paradise? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains 3 characteristics. And we want to ask ourselves, as we look over these characteristics, we want to ask ourselves, are these characteristics my characteristics? And if they're not, what can I do to make sure that I start following the path to make these characteristics my characteristics? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي السَّرَّاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ. Those who give, they give charity during the good times and the hard times. So Ramadan is the month of giving. Alhamdulillah, for sure. Inshallah ta'ala, people are going to be giving this month. Maybe you should look into, I know sometimes there's a big fundraiser or something like that happening and you might attend a big fundraiser and give a lot of money. But there's this year in particular, I don't know if you guys know this, and you probably do, but I'll point it out just in case, that a lot of the fundraising projects that happen in Ramadan happen on site, meaning that you have fundraising dinners, fundraising at the Taraweeh at the masjid, fundraising at, there's all these events that happen in Ramadan time, and this year it's not happening. And so because it's not happening and they don't have that physical structure to get the funds that they need, there's going to be this huge recession, if you will, in fundraising, because the amount of locations online where fundraising can be done is limited, or to get everybody's eyes and attention the way that they might be able to do in their community. So I want you to bear that in mind. And if normally you give to a masjid or your local and stuff like that, this is my advice to you, and that is, try to think of how much you gave in the past year or something like that, what you normally do. Maybe do a little bit better. And then without the masjid asking you for these things, because the masjid these days is going to have a very hard time getting your attention, just give it. Let it be, my reminder to you. Those who give in the good times and the hard times. I've been thinking about, with the COVID situation, there's been a huge focus, obviously, and rightfully so, on the virus, but the next wave that's going to happen right now is the financial fallout that's going to take place coming up now, as people are kind of coming out from quarantine, coming out from lockdowns, and they're going to find, may Allah protect us, that their job is not there anymore. Maybe their business, their industry even, may be out of business. Their shops have been closed, and these people have maybe been at home for 1 month, 2 months, run out of money, and they have debts. So they might have rental debts, they might have other debts, as you know. So it's at this time that you want to step back and say, you know what, I want to give during the good times and the hard times. And I think definitely we're in those hard times. That we're in the hard times, and, you know, old ideas of you know what, you owe me money, I'm going to take you to the court, and I'm going to get my money. You know what? It's different times right now, and Islam is so full of, I was just actually watching a TED Talk about forgiveness and how the law, it's a very interesting TED Talk. I don't know if I still have it open. No, I don't. Very interesting TED Talk on how our laws, and this is talking about the US, how our laws are so focused on punishment, and yet in religion, and as we see in Islam, and I thought about it, there's so much focus on forgiveness. There's so much focus on forgiveness. And even when I tell you guys about, you know, the debt collector, the Prophet ﷺ spoke about, and he would go and collect debts from people, and he would tell them, look, go and collect my debts, and if somebody needs more time, then forgive them. Perhaps Allah will forgive us. You know, and in our mindset, and when it comes to debts, our attitude is like, no forgiveness, no forgiveness. Like, I think it also reminds me of, if we are in a, you know, when you're like in a movie theater or something like that, and, you know, in case of a fire, they say, everybody just calm down and walk and do not run. Because if some people start running, then everybody starts running. For example, like the toilet paper run that happened at the beginning of COVID. Once one person starts running, then everybody starts running, and it freaks everybody out. What if, taking that same concept, everybody started have this attitude of forgiving debts at this time? And it wasn't just one person then taking the brunt of all this financial, but just it was passed over. So basically we blanketed the whole world, instead of with virus, but blanket the whole world with forgiveness in debt. And inshallah ta'ala, if that's the case, then I think we can go further. But if this isn't the case, if now is the time where we're not being forgiving to other people, then other people will come back on us and things can collapse. So that's my reminder about giving during the good times and the hard times. Make a special focus this Ramadan, because you're not going to get so many fundraising motivations the way you do when you go to the masajid. Inshallah ta'ala, put in your own mental attitude to give more this Ramadan. The second characteristic that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says of the muttaqeen that get the paradise and get the maghfirah, get the forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, says, وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ, those who refrain from getting angry. If you'll notice throughout the Quran, the Sunnah, the Prophet ﷺ is always advising people to not get angry. And the Prophet ﷺ, interesting characteristic about him, he would never get angry for himself. And what that means is, if there was any issue that, you know, it was his own thing, it was his own personal, he would get angry for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If, you know, the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's boundaries were crossed and he needed to put his foot down, for example, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But if something happened to him, such as a child not listening to him and the Prophet ﷺ didn't get angry, or somebody would do something to him, or somebody would say something inappropriate, whatnot, the Prophet ﷺ wouldn't get angry. And that made me reflect on myself, and I'd say, what are the things that we get angry for? They're really, when you look at it, it's just annoyances. And then we make anger, it builds up and it becomes part of our characteristic. What if we decide that, you know what, I'm not going to get angry because I want it to be my characteristic of the muttaqeen, and I want maghfirah, and I want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's paradise, whose expanse is the heaven, the earth. And what if you have that active intention? That when, you know, there's a situation that would normally make you angry, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to let go of this anger because I'm in it for the hereafter. And anger is, you know, the first step to so many haram. So anger leads to, could lead to killing, murder. Anger could lead to death. Anger could lead to abuse. We are hearing about marital abuse and spousal abuse that's happening that comes from anger. Anger leads to a person backbiting and trying to ruin somebody's honor. And so on. So the Prophet ﷺ said about the strong person, the strongest one amongst you isn't the person with the biggest muscles, but the strongest person, or the wrestler, or the MMA fighter. The strongest person amongst you is the one who is able to control their anger at times and situations that normally provoke anger. And this person doesn't get angry. That is the strongest one, as the Prophet ﷺ said. And that's it. That's our reminder. That's our truffle for today. Jazakallah khairan. I will end with these words of Mandela, in which he said that resentment is like drinking a poison and expecting resentment is like drinking a poison and hoping it'll kill your enemies. Wallahu ta'ala. All right, questions. If somebody's got a question, welcome, welcome. Given the good times and hard times, don't get angry and forgive people. وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ. Yeah, and sorry, and I would kind of like putting it together about the debt and like giving in the good times and the hard times. Don't get angry and forgive people. And I was saying that during this COVID and the second wave of financial fallout that's going to happen, it's very important for us to understand this when it comes to all the people that may owe us money, to be forgiving, maybe give more time, maybe give more payment plans and stuff like that, and be forgiving to people. And let's all have this attitude of forgiveness with each other. All right, great. So here's the question. First questions come up. And before I forget, Visionaire 2020. We've been doing this program for the last 7 years consistently. Inshallah ta'ala, it is happening this Saturday. It is starting this Saturday. So we're only a few days. Visionaire is going to be on, it's a 4-day program, 2 hours per day, and it's an experience. It's an experience of finding out what the deepest, the deepest, most sunshine-filling du'as that you care about and bringing it up to the front. It takes so long to find out these du'as because we want to find du'as for you that matter so much to you, even if it's not in response to pain. And that's what Visionaire is about, inshallah ta'ala. It is happening very soon. Check it out, visionaireramadan.com. So let's go to the questions. What if somebody owes you money and refuse to pay intentionally? Do you still forgive them? So Aisha, there is sometimes you're in situations where even if you forgive the person doesn't care. I've spoken about this before. That actually happens a lot. Sometimes the person is even dead. They don't care if you forgive them. And like you said, they're being intentional. They're like, I don't care if you forgive me or not. I'm not giving you this money, and so on. And do you still forgive them? And Aisha, I would just say that, you know what, the most painful thing about that situation, that thing I said about poison, about drinking poison and hoping your enemies will die, you're the one that suffers from that. This person who is not paying intentionally is causing you harm, is causing you mental harm, and it's like a poison that starts building within you. So what I would say is, I'm not saying that you have to forgive them. So forgiveness is optional, right? You don't have to. If somebody owes you money and you want to hold them accountable and stuff like that, I hope that, all of us, and a reminder for me during these hard times, that we adopt an attitude of forgiveness, but you don't have to forgive the person. What you could do is give them chances to pay at later times, or you could be like, Anyways, I'll move on, but bottom line is no, you don't have to forgive them. Hold on. Shahnaz, is it permissible to ask forgiveness from people before Ramadan? I don't know what you mean, Shahnaz, about is it permissible? Yeah, of course, it's actually encouraged. I don't know if somebody would say that before Ramadan. It's not like the Prophet ﷺ said, oh, before Ramadan, everybody should ask for forgiveness. If that's what you mean, that then that might be more cultural than it is specifically. But at all times, we should be asking people to forgive us if we wrong them. Cyrus, question, wa alaikum assalam, Syra, good to have you, welcome back. Is there such thing as good anger? What's the line between the two? In the case of when the Prophet ﷺ would get angry, he would get angry when it's a situation where somebody was overstepping Allah's bounds. And he's the messenger of Allah ﷺ. So for example, one of the situations the Prophet ﷺ got angry was this woman stole something, and one of the companions came to intercede on her behalf. And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Atashfa'u fi hadd min hududillah." He said, are you trying to intercede on one of the from the hudud of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So the Prophet ﷺ got angry that that when a rich woman steals, that she gets interceded for, and when a poor person steals, then they apply the punishment. Yeah, so that was a situation. This is the hudud of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think a lot of times though, our anger that we're talking about, I don't think we get to this level in anger, but when we're talking about anger, it's usually for ourselves. When we're getting angry for ourselves, then that's not, like the Prophet ﷺ said, La taghdab, don't get angry. And I think you should also look at, that situation with Aisha radiallahu anha where somebody swore at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Aisha swore back. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, be gentle, O Aisha, because whatever gentleness is attitude makes it softer. And whenever gentleness is taken away, it makes it harder. And Aisha radiallahu anha said, didn't you hear what they said, O Messenger of Allah? And he said, I did. And I responded and I said, and the same be unto you. And he left it at that. So that also gives you an example of putting rifq into something, putting gentleness. Allah. Thanks. Aisha says, do you personally recommend doing a Khatm al-Quran multiple times or concentrate memorizing portions? So just the idea of finishing for the sake of finishing, I don't like that idea of where the goal is getting to the end. I would hope that if somebody's doing multiple Khatm al-Qur'ans, it's because they love the journey and not necessarily that, hey, I need to get like a number at the end. Maybe they get motivated by that and they are paying attention, but I would, even in Taraweeh, is the focus on like, oh, I need to finish something, or is it, hey, I'm here to enjoy the journey and pay attention to what Allah SWT is commanding and stuff like that. So with regards to your question, is it better to memorize portions or do multiple Khatm al-Qur'ans? Aisha, I would tell you, maybe not do so many Khatm al-Qur'ans and focus on memorizing. So try to do both. And you don't have to do multiple khatms, but if you only focus on memorization, what you might find is you won't memorize that much and you'll start getting lazy and you don't have a teacher or something like that. And then what happens is you don't do either. You don't complete memorization of the, memorizing verses, and you also miss out on doing those multiple khatmas. Allah. Shumaila's question, and how can we get to becoming the kind of person who only gets angry for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And by the way, when I say getting angry for the sake of Allah, doesn't mean that the response, every time somebody does something wrong that we get angry. That's not, there's certain instances where the Prophet ﷺ did that, but you have to realize that people did haram things in front of the Prophet ﷺ. Give you an example of the man who urinated in the masjid and everybody got angry and wanted to beat him up. The Prophet ﷺ said, let him be, let him finish. urinating. And then he called them over. The Prophet ﷺ called them over. So being angry for the sake of Allah doesn't mean that the only technique in da'wah is getting angry. It doesn't mean that. It just means that there will be situations, some major situations where somebody needs to put their foot down, yes. So that's why I'm saying, even when it comes to da'wah, you don't respond with anger. Even when it comes to da'wah, you don't respond with anger. So how do you become the kind of person who only gets angry? I would say, how do you become the person who doesn't get angry? That's what I would say. How do you become a person who doesn't get angry, that doesn't fall back on anger? You can be passionate about topics, you can care about topics, but losing your mind and becoming like a werewolf is not what the Prophet ﷺ advised. La taghdab. Four more minutes. This question is from Najia. Is it okay to take time to forgive someone for something that they did if the person has been hurt? Hurt feels that if they forgive them, they're not ready, might lead to resentment. So we have in the Sunnah, the Prophet ﷺ said, if you're angry at somebody, you can be angry at them and not talk to them, cut them off for 3 days. So you see an example of not speaking to somebody for 3 days, that's okay. The problem, Najia, what you're saying is that if it might lead to resentment, take the 3 days and start counting. But if you go beyond it, I've seen this, sometimes somebody's angry for so long with somebody else that there's no going back from that anger. It's almost like that anger, that poison has sat in their bloodstream too long that they've died from it. That anger it's finished them off. And you probably experienced this, like you're angry at somebody so long, even if you forgive them like 2 years later, are you ever going to go back to that old relationship? It'll never happen. So that's why we see from the Sunnah that 3 days is okay to cut the person off and enjoy cutting them off for 3 days. You have 3 days. Nimra, yes, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to do the Taraweeh truffles. Taraweeh truffles start at 1 p.m. New York time, and the Visionaire classes, when they happen, May 4th, inshallah ta'ala, this Saturday, will be at 1:30. 2 more minutes. I'm looking for... Imam's question, what about those who take advantage of your forgiveness and they continue to do the same things over and over? You know what it reminds me of, Imama? It reminds me of the human being's relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What if the human being continues to sin and they keep going back to the sin and again? How does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala respond to that? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues to forgive that person. So in your question, what if you forgive somebody and they haven't learned, if you will? Yes, like let's suppose you have a child and you forgive them and then they go back to being a child again and they make the same mistake. You might need a different way to teach them, but it doesn't mean that forgiveness is off the table because, they didn't learn their lesson, inshallah ta'ala. It's just like, hey, if you're talking about behavior change, how do you change people's behavior? And, forgiveness may be one, but you're talking about how can you influence people's behavior. There are other techniques to implement. I was looking for somebody who has normally asked a question. So Abdurrahman Ahmed, is it permissible to slap someone that angers you so long as you smile whilst doing it? Asking for a friend. Slapping is haram. You know what else is haram is uglification, calling somebody ugly. So if you, for example, like the slapping, let's suppose it's between, your friend, asking for a friend. Let's suppose somebody slaps somebody and says, you're so ugly, you're like an animal, you're uglier than a donkey, that kind of stuff. That is haram to do. So uglification, a word that I made up, but you understand what it means, and slapping is not permissible. It doesn't matter if you smile. Sundus, you can ask a riddle, but we're coming to the end. What's your riddle? Amr, so this is our last question and we'll be finished. Can Allah forgive me if the person won't forgive me? I don't know what the situation that you're talking about, but you've got there's two parties here, if you will. There's two relationships. There's your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's what you want to ask forgiveness for. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is most forgiving. And then you go to that person and the person says, no, I will never forgive you. So you need to do your part as much as you can to make up for that. Sometimes it'll take very long and the person doesn't forgive you and this and that. But you just have to make sure that you do your side of asking for forgiveness. I would advise you, Hamid, as well, that if somebody's cutting you off for a very long time, maybe at some point, this person will forgive you and there will be so much pain because they put you through this so long that you may want to lash back at them for any mistake that they do or whatnot. This happens in family relations. Somebody's cutting off somebody for 5 years, then the other person starts cutting them off for 10 years, and it's like back and forth like that. My advice to you, inshallah ta'ala, Amir, inshallah, one day they will forgive you, and when they do, then accept it and don't let that pain of all these years come back and make you want to lash back at them. Allah. All right, guys, we are done. Check it out, visionaireramadan.com. If you're serious about taking your du'as and getting this experience of designing dream du'as in Ramadan, so that when we come to the last 10 nights of Ramadan, inshallah ta'ala, these will be the most precious du'as for you in your life, then check out visionaireramadan.com, and inshallah ta'ala we'll be starting it soon. Jazakallah khairan, everybody. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for tuning in, and tomorrow invite your friends.